Can you protect me, human? Asked the alien princess. She didn't realize. I was 3 drinks into a very bad evening when she walked through the door. Not the kind of door you walk through. The kind you make an entrance through. And she made one. The bar on Nexus 7 was the sort of place where nobody looked at anybody twice, because looking twice usually got you into the kind of trouble that ended with your body floating between cargo lanes. Smugglers, bounty chasers, deserters, and drifters filled every crooked table and leaned against every rust-streaked wall. The lights were low. The music was worse. And I was sitting in the back corner with a glass of something the bartender called whiskey but tasted more like engine coolant filtered through regret. That is when she came in. 7 feet tall, silver skin that caught the dim light and threw it back in soft waves. Her eyes were large and pale, the color of winter moons, and her face carried the kind of expression that said she had walked into 1,000 rooms and owned every single one. There were faint markings along her cheekbones and down her neck, tiny points of soft blue light that pulsed beneath her skin like a second heartbeat. Bioluminescent freckles. I had heard about the Aethan before, but never seen one up close. Behind her stood 2 guards, Kavari, silicon-based, 8 feet tall, built like cathedral pillars carved from living crystal. They scanned the room with faceted eyes that could probably read the serial number off a bullet from across a landing bay. They were considered the finest personal protectors in known space. Empires hired them. Warlords feared them. The fact that she had 2 of them meant she was someone very important, and the fact that she was walking into this bar meant she was someone in very serious trouble. Everyone in the bar looked at her once, then they looked away. That was the smart move. Her guards took positions on either side, their crystalline bodies humming with a low vibration I could feel in my teeth. She looked down at me. I looked up at her. Nobody said anything for about 5 seconds. Then she spoke. Her voice was smooth, precise, and cold in the way a surgical blade is cold. Not cruel, just efficient. The destination is the Conclave Summit on Aerith Prime. The compensation is 40,000 galactic credits, half on agreement, half on completion. I set my glass down. 40,000 credits was more money than I had seen in 3 years. That alone told me something was wrong. You do not pay 40,000 credits for a 7-day babysitting job unless the baby is being hunted. You have 2 Kavari standing right behind you, I said. They are worth more than anything I can offer you. Why do you need me? Something shifted in her expression. Just a flicker. If I had blinked, I would have missed it, but I did not blink. The Kavari are being reassigned, she said. There has been a restructuring of my security detail. I need a temporary replacement. Someone discreet. Someone who will not attract the attention of the intelligence networks monitoring my movements. And a human fits that description. Precisely. You are telling me you want me because nobody thinks I matter. I am telling you that your insignificance is, in this specific circumstance, an asset. They were folded in front of her, perfectly composed, perfectly still, but the light beneath her skin was pulsing faster than before. A tiny detail, the kind most people would not notice. But I had spent years reading bodies the way other people read words. Her hands were steady because she was forcing them to be. Underneath that royal composure, Princess Vira Sailteen was terrified. "Who is hunting you?" I asked. She did not answer immediately. Then, quietly, she said, "The Hollow Syndicate." The bar suddenly felt colder. The Hollow Syndicate was not a name you said out loud in places like this. They were the most effective and most feared assassination network in the known galaxy. Governments used them. Corporations used them. And when someone said the Hollow Syndicate had a contract on your head, the smart money was on attending your funeral. "Why?" I asked. "I am scheduled to deliver testimony at the Conclave Summit." Individuals in your own government. In my own family. That last word hung in the air between us like smoke. She said it without flinching, but the lights in her skin dimmed for just a moment. Just a heartbeat of darkness before the glow returned. I knew what that meant even without understanding Athen biology. It meant it cost her something to say it. I looked at her for a long time. Then I looked at the Kavari guards. They were staring straight ahead, expressions unreadable, but their crystalline bodies had gone slightly opaque. In Kavari body language, that meant discomfort. They knew they were being pulled off her detail. They did not like it. And the fact that they could not stop it meant whoever was behind this had enough power to override a royal security command. This was bad. This was very, very bad. And every rational instinct I had was telling me to finish my drink, wish her well, and walk away. But here is the thing about rational instincts. I have never been very good at listening to them. "You called me insignificant," I said. "I stated a tactical assessment. You also said nobody would notice me, that nobody thinks a human matters. That is correct." I finished my drink, set the glass down carefully, looked her in the eye. "Your tactical assessment is wrong," I said, "but I will take the job." She blinked, just once. I think she expected me to negotiate, or to ask more questions, or to demand better terms. Everything I owned fit in that pack. That is the kind of life I had been living. For the first time, something other than calculated composure crossed her face. It was surprise. Not at what I said, but at how I said it. Like she expected me to move slowly, to ask permission, to hesitate. Like she expected a human to be unsure. I was not unsure. I was not brave either. I was just the kind of person who made decisions fast and dealt with the consequences later. That is not courage, that is damage. But it works. We left the bar. The Kavhari guards walked us to a mid-class shuttle docked in Bay 14. It was unremarkable, intentionally so. No military markings, no royal insignia, just another ship in a sea of ships. The guards stopped at the boarding ramp. One of them, the taller one, turned to Vyra and said something in a language I did not understand. His crystalline voice was low and resonant, like a bell struck underwater. Whatever he said, it made her pause. She placed her hand against his chest, and his body glowed warm amber where she touched it. Then she turned away and walked up the ramp without looking back. I nodded to the guards. They looked at me the way you might look at a paper umbrella before a hurricane, with something between pity and confusion. Inside the shuttle, I ran a security sweep. It was not sophisticated. I checked the doors, the vents, the cargo bay, the maintenance hatches. I checked the cockpit systems, the navigation computer, the communications array. I looked for anything that did not belong. It took me 20 minutes. Vyra watched me the entire time from a seat in the passenger cabin, her long legs folded beneath her, her pale eyes tracking my every movement. "You are very thorough," she said. "You are paying me to be thorough. I am paying you to stand between me and a weapon when the time comes." I stopped checking the ventilation panel and looked at her. "Is that what you think this is? I think you are a temporary solution to a temporary problem. I think the syndicate will send someone, and you will slow them down long enough for me to survive. That is your function." "My function?" "Yes." I went back to checking the vents. "You have a very specific idea of what humans are good for." "I have a very specific idea of what this galaxy has taught me about humans. Your species is young, fragile, and short-lived. You have no natural armor, no venom, no heightened senses beyond a narrow spectrum. You bruise easily. You break easily. You are, by every objective measure, one of the least physically capable sentient species in recorded space. You have done your research." Humans are soft, we break. We do not heal fast. We are not strong compared to half the species on this station. That small gesture made the bioluminescent freckles along her jaw shift and shimmer. What do you mean? I mean exactly what I said. We do not stop. Not when we are bleeding. Not when we are outnumbered. Not when every logical calculation says we should quit. There is something inside us that does not accept the math. You can call it stubbornness. You can call it a defect. But when a human decides something matters, they will walk through fire for it. And they will keep walking until the fire goes out, or they do. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "That sounds like a flaw, not a feature." Most species think so, until they are standing on the other side of it. She did not respond to that. I finished my sweep, locked down the ship, and took the co-pilot seat in the cockpit. The autopilot had a course plotted through 3 jump points, carefully chosen to avoid the major shipping lanes. Whoever had planned this route knew what they were doing. I checked it twice anyway. 7 days, 5 systems, 1 arrival alive. That was the job. I pulled up the shuttle's basic weapons inventory. We were running fast and quiet, and if someone caught us, We were going to have a very interesting conversation with whatever they brought. I settled into the seat and pulled out my sidearm. Most species used plasma weapons or directed energy systems. My gun fired shaped metal at high velocity. It was crude, loud, and profoundly effective at putting holes in things that did not want holes in them. I had carried it for 9 years. It had never let me down. Vira appeared in the cockpit doorway. She looked at the gun, then at me. Is that a kinetic weapon? Yes. Those are considered obsolete in most civilized systems. Most civilized systems have never been shot with one. She studied me for a long moment, and I could see her trying to categorize me, trying to fit me into the framework she had built for what humans were: disposable, insignificant, a temporary body between her and danger. I could see it in her eyes, that certainty, and beneath it, just barely visible, the first hairline crack of doubt. Get some rest, I told her. It is going to be a long 7 days. I do not sleep easily around strangers. She held my gaze for 3 more seconds. Then she turned and walked back to the cabin. I heard her settle into the seat. I heard her breathing slow. And about 40 minutes later, I heard something I do not think she intended me to hear. Her breathing changed. It evened out. She fell asleep. She called me insignificant. She called me disposable. I checked the navigation console one more time, adjusted our heading by half a degree, and settled in for a long night. I did not sleep. I had learned a long time ago that sleep was a luxury, and I had stopped being able to afford luxuries around the same time I stopped being able to afford a home. 7 days. I had kept people alive for longer than that, with less than this. And something about the way she trembled when she said the word expendable made me decide, quietly and without ceremony, that this princess was going to reach that summit alive. Not because of the money. Not because of the job. Because she reminded me of someone I could not save once. And I was not going to let that happen again. "14 hours. That is how long the silence lasted. 14 hours of empty space, steady engines, and the quiet hum of a ship doing exactly what it was supposed to do. I should have known it would not last. In my experience, the universe does not give you silence out of kindness. It gives you silence the way a predator gives you a head start. I was out of the chair and at the main console in 2 seconds. The display showed our shuttle as a small blue dot in a field of nothing, and then, directly behind us and closing fast, a shape that had not existed on any scan until the moment it dropped its cloak. An interceptor. Running dark with no transponder, no identification, and weapons already charging. Vira, I called out. My voice was calm, but my hands were already moving, killing the autopilot, grabbing the manual controls, and pulling us into a hard lateral roll that pushed the inertial dampeners to their limit. Wake up, we have company. She appeared in the cockpit doorway within seconds. Her silver skin had gone slightly pale, and the bioluminescent markings along her cheeks were pulsing in rapid, uneven patterns. Fear, but her voice was steady when she spoke. How many? One ship. But it is not the ship I am worried about. It is what is inside it. They were not here to blow us up. They were here to board us, which meant they wanted Vira alive long enough to confirm the removal, or they wanted to make a point, or both. Either way, they were coming inside. I heard the sound before I saw it on the sensors. A deep, resonant clang that vibrated through the hull like a struck bell. Magnetic clamps. The interceptor had latched onto our hull like a parasite attaching itself to a host. I felt the ship shudder as breaching tools began cutting through the outer plating of the starboard cargo bay. They are cutting in through cargo, I said. We have maybe 3 minutes before they breach. Vira looked at me, and in that look, I saw the calculation she was running. She was measuring me against whatever was about to come through that hull. She was estimating how long I would last. She was already thinking about the escape pod at the rear of the ship and how many seconds my body could buy her. She stared at me. You do not know what they are sending. It does not matter what they are sending. You are one human with a primitive weapon. Yes. Against Hollow Syndicate operatives. Yes. She shook her head, and I saw it clearly in her expression. Pity. She pitied me. She was watching a small, soft creature prepare to throw itself against a wall, and she felt sorry for it, because it did not understand how fragile it was. Go to the pod, I told her again. Stay near it. Do not open it unless I tell you to, or unless you hear nothing from me for 5 minutes. If 5 minutes pass, and there is only silence, launch it, and do not look back. She moved down the corridor. I watched her go. Then I turned toward the cargo bay. The corridor between the cockpit and the cargo hold was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people to stand side by side. That was good. Narrow spaces are a gift when you are outnumbered. They turn a fight from a math problem into a geometry problem, and geometry does not care how big you are. I drew my pistol. I pulled my short blade from the sheath on my thigh. The blade was 8 inches of hardened steel, simple, sharp, and utterly unremarkable by galactic standards. The kind of weapon a more advanced species would look at and dismiss as primitive. Good. Let them dismiss it. A blade does not need to be sophisticated. It just needs to be sharp, and I kept mine sharp enough to split light. Three of them. I recognized the species immediately, and my stomach tightened. Vreth were insectoid predators, 6-limbed, covered in an exoskeleton that could deflect most energy weapons, with mandibles that carried a paralytic venom capable of dropping a full-grown Kavari in seconds. They were fast, precise, and very, very good at what they did. The galaxy rated them among the top 5 most dangerous predatory species in known space. They moved like liquid shadow, their segmented bodies flowing through the breached hull with a grace that made my skin crawl. The first one saw me and stopped. Its compound eyes reflected the corridor lights in fractured patterns, and its mandibles clicked in a rapid sequence that my translator rendered as laughter. It was laughing. It looked at me, a single human standing in a narrow hallway, with a metal blade and a projectile weapon, and it laughed. That was its first mistake. It lunged, fast, faster than anything that size had a right to move. A bladed forelimb sliced toward my throat with enough force to cut through ship plating. I dropped low, felt the blade pass over my head close enough to shave hair, and drove my short blade upward into the joint, where the forelimb met the thorax. The exoskeleton was thick, but joints are joints, and every armored creature in the universe has the same weakness where the plates meet. The blade went in. I fired the pistol twice. The rounds hit the second Vreth center mass. Its exoskeleton cracked. Not shattered, not destroyed, but cracked. And the impact drove it backward into the third one, buying me 2 seconds. I used them to press forward, closing the distance on the wounded first attacker before it could recover. Another thrust with the blade, this time into the softer tissue at the base of the skull, where the head met the neck. The Vreth convulsed and dropped. The second one recovered and came at me again. One of its forelimbs caught my left arm just above the elbow. Not a deep cut, but the venom was immediate. I felt it enter my bloodstream like cold fire, and within seconds, my left arm went numb from the shoulder down. A dead weight hanging at my side. My fingers would not close. My hand would not grip. The arm was done. Any other species would have gone down. The Vreth knew this. They were counting on it. Their venom was designed to shut down motor function in seconds. In the Vreth experience, one sting meant one removal. Clean, efficient, guaranteed. They had never stung a human before. I switched the blade to my right hand, transferred the pistol to my belt, and kept fighting. The second Vreth hesitated. I could see confusion in the way its compound eyes refocused, the way its mandibles clicked in a different pattern. Its venom was in my blood. I should be on the floor. I should be paralyzed. Instead, I was still standing, still moving, and coming toward it with something in my expression that its instincts did not know how to process. When we are threatened, when we are hurt, when something we care about is in danger, our bodies flood themselves with it. It does not make us stronger in any way that matters on a biological chart. What it does is turn off the part of our brain that tells us to stop. Pain becomes a signal we can choose to ignore. Exhaustion becomes a suggestion we can decline. Our muscles tear, our bones crack, our blood flows, and we keep going, because something older and deeper than rational thought takes over and says one simple word: continue. I hit the second Vreth with everything I had. It was not graceful. It was not elegant. I fought the way humans have always fought, when the numbers are against them and the stakes are absolute. I fought ugly, close, and without any intention of stopping until one of us was done. I used the narrow corridor to keep the third one behind the second, forcing them to come at me one at a time. I took hits. A slash across my ribs that parted my shirt and the skin beneath it. A glancing blow to my hip that would have broken an eighth in femur. I kept moving. The ship's cargo bay was still open to the interceptor, and the vacuum seals were holding, but I could see the emergency release panel on the wall. A plan formed in my mind. Not a good plan. Not a smart plan. The kind of plan that only works if you are willing to accept consequences that any sane creature would consider unacceptable. I let them come. I let them push me back until I was beside the emergency release panel. Then I hit it. The cargo bay doors blew open. The vacuum of space grabbed everything that was not bolted down, including the second Vreth, which was caught mid-lunge and sucked backward through the breach. The third one caught the doorframe with two of its limbs, mandibles shrieking against the rush of escaping atmosphere. I braced myself against a structural beam with my one good arm, felt the vacuum pulling at me with cold, invisible hands, and emptied my pistol into the Vreth clinging to the doorframe. 4 rounds. 3 of them found the joints. The Vreth lost its grip and vanished into the dark. I collapsed against the wall, my left arm useless, blood running from the gash on my ribs, my ears ringing, my vision narrowing at the edges. The whole fight had lasted less than 4 minutes. I sat there breathing for about 30 seconds. Then I stood up, because sitting was a luxury, and the clock was still running. The interceptor disconnected from our hull. I felt the clamps release, felt the ship rock gently, as the other vessel pulled away. Gone. They would report back. They would send more. But not tonight. I found the medical kit in the cockpit storage locker. I did them by hand, without anesthetic. That small, beautiful moment of alien confusion. It kept me steady. She looked at the body, then she looked at me. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. I watched her try to process what she was seeing, and I watched every assumption she had about humans crack and shift and rearrange itself behind those pale, moon-colored eyes. "You are still conscious," she said. Not a question. A statement of disbelief. "Barely," I said. "You were envenomated. Vreth paralytic should have rendered you immobile within seconds." "It rendered my arm immobile within seconds. The rest of me had other plans." She came closer. She moved slowly, the way you approach something you are not sure is safe to touch. She crouched beside me and looked at the wound on my ribs. The stitches were rough but functional. She reached toward them, then stopped, her fingers hovering an inch from my skin. "You sutured yourself," she said. "Without anesthesia." I was humming a song. It helps. A song. An old one. My mother used to sing it. I do not remember the words anymore, but the melody works. She sat back on her heels and looked at me, and for the first time since I had met her, the royal mask was gone. Not cracked, not adjusted, gone. What was underneath was younger than I expected, frightened in a way she would never admit, and confused in a way that went deeper than the fight. "I have seen Kavari royal guards in combat," she said quietly. "They are precise. They are calculated. They are magnificent. You were none of those things." "No." Something happened. I just choose not to let it stop me. She was quiet for a long time. The ship hummed around us. The stars slid past the viewports. The dead breath cooled on the cargo bay floor. Finally, she spoke again, and her voice was different. Smaller, less certain, more real. "Has anyone ever studied your species? Properly studied you?" I smiled. It probably looked terrible, bloody and tired and half delirious. Everyone who tried stopped taking notes and started running. She did not laugh, but she did not look away either. She looked at me the way you look at a locked door when you realize the key you have been carrying does not fit. The antiseptic you used is designed for Terran bacteria. If there is Vreth toxin residue in the tissue, it will need a different treatment. I am beginning to think that was an oversight. She retrieved a secondary medical kit from the passenger cabin. It was Athen-made, sleeker, and more advanced than the one I had used. She sat beside me and began cleaning the wound with a precision that surprised me. Her long silver fingers were steady, careful, and surprisingly warm. The bioluminescent freckles on her hands glowed soft blue as she worked, and I noticed they pulsed in a slow, even rhythm. Calm. She was calm. Not performing calm. Actually calm. "You should sleep," she said when she finished. "I will sleep when you are safe. You need to recover. Your body has sustained significant trauma." "My body has sustained worse and kept going. That is sort of our thing." She looked at me with an expression I could not quite read. Then she stood, walked to the cockpit, and sat in the co-pilot's seat. "You do not know how to operate this ship's sensor array. Then teach me." She was not looking at me like a shield anymore. She was not looking at me like something disposable. She was looking at me like a person she had underestimated, and she was angry at herself for it. I taught her the sensor array. She learned fast, faster than anyone I had ever taught. And when she finally fell asleep 3 hours later, slumped in the co-pilot's chair with the sensor display still glowing in front of her, I pulled a thermal blanket from the storage bin and draped it over her shoulders. She stirred. I did not understand the words. The ship's translation log would later tell me she said a single word that meant something between stay and remain, and do not leave. I stayed. I remained. I did not leave. The next 2 days were quiet in the way that the space between heartbeats is quiet. Not peaceful, just waiting. I used the time to heal as much as my body would allow. The feeling came back to my left arm on the second day, starting as pins and needles. I flexed my fingers every hour, running through the range of motion until I could grip my pistol again. She wanted to understand how my body was repairing itself, how the venom was being metabolized, how the wound on my ribs was already showing signs of closure after just 48 hours. Your healing factor is remarkably slow by galactic standards, she said. studying the wound with a handheld scanner. An Athan would have closed this wound within hours. A Kavari would not have been wounded in the first place. We are not built for speed, I said. We are built for distance. What does that mean? It means humans are not the fastest healers, or the strongest fighters, or the most resilient organisms. Mile after mile, hour after hour, until the animal collapsed from exhaustion. We did not outrun our prey, we outlasted it. She set the scanner down. Keep going. Our muscles are designed for long-duration effort. Our cooling system, sweating, lets us run in heat that would shut down most species. Our minds are wired to plan ahead, to think in long arcs, to hold a goal in our heads for days or weeks or years, and pursue it relentlessly. We are the species that walks. She was quiet for a moment, processing this. Then she said, "That is why the venom did not stop you." The venom stopped my arm. It did not stop me. There is a difference. She looked at me with those pale eyes, and I could see the questions multiplying behind them. Not just about my biology, about everything. About the assumptions she had carried her entire life regarding where humans fit in the galactic hierarchy. I told her about our wars, not the politics of them, but the nature of them, how humans had fought each other, with sticks and stones and iron and fire, and splitting the atom itself, and how after every catastrophe, every plague, every extinction-level event, we had rebuilt. Every single time, no matter how badly we were broken, we put the pieces back together and kept going. I told her about bonding. That was the one that really got her attention. She asked, incredulous, after watching me spend 20 minutes repairing a malfunctioning cleaning drone in the cargo bay. We form emotional attachments to everything, I said. I finished the repair and set the little drone on the floor. It whirred to life and began trundling around the bay in happy little circles, bumping into walls and adjusting course. We name our ships. We talk to our vehicles. We feel guilt when we throw away a machine that has served us well. Pet rocks. It was a cultural phenomenon. Do not ask me to explain it further because I cannot. She watched the drone bumble around the cargo bay, and something in her expression softened. You named it, she said. I had, without thinking about it. I had called it Biscuit, because it was small and round, and it made me smile. That is not a tactical decision, she said. No, it is a human decision. We protect what we name. We fight harder for things we love than things we are paid for. You can call it irrational. You can call it a weakness. But when a human gives something a name, that thing becomes part of their world. And humans defend their world with everything they have. She was quiet for a long time after that. I could see her turning the idea over in her mind, examining it from different angles, testing it against everything she knew. And I could see the moment it connected. The moment she looked at me and realized that I had never asked her to repeat her name. I had remembered it the first time she said it. not the princess, herself. Her mother had died when Vira was young, an illness that the Aethan had the technology to cure but chose not to, because the political cost of saving a queen who had spoken against the ruling council was higher than the cost of letting her die. Vira had been 12. She had stood at her mother's bedside and watched the light fade from her skin, watched the bioluminescent freckles go dark one by one like stars winking out, and she had promised herself that she would never let power be used that way again. The bioweapon testimony was not just political. It was personal. She was doing what her mother would have done. She was speaking truth to power, even though power had already killed the last person who tried. "Is that why you are going to the conclave?" I asked. "For her?" "I am going, because it is the right thing to do. But yes, also for her." I did not say anything. I did not need to. She knew it. Neither of us said it out loud. Saying it would make it real, and real things can be taken away. Not because I did not trust the autopilot, but because I trusted nothing. Every hour, I manually cross-referenced our plotted course against the star charts, checking for deviations, corrections, or alterations that should not be there. Vira had initially mocked this habit. She called it paranoid. I called it breathing. On the 4th hour of day 4, I found it. The navigation computer had been remotely accessed. Someone had inserted a micro-correction into our course. So small it would not trigger any alarm. So subtle it would not show up on a standard diagnostic. A fraction of a degree. Barely noticeable. But over the remaining distance to the conclave, that fraction of a degree would carry us directly into an asteroid belt in an uncharted system. A natural kill zone. No witnesses, no wreckage to find. Just another ship lost in the void. "We have been hacked," I told Vira. Her face went still. "The navigation system has military-grade encryption." I watched the color drain from her bioluminescent freckles. She understood what I was saying. The hack did not come from outside. It came from someone who had the codes. Someone in her circle. From that point on, I flew the ship by hand, cross-referencing every calculation against paper star charts I had printed from the database. Old-fashioned, slow, immune to hacking. The asteroid belt appeared on long-range sensors, exactly where the tampered course would have taken us. Vira stared at the display, at the dense field of spinning rock and metal that would have torn our shuttle apart, and said nothing for a very long time. "If you had not been checking," she said quietly. I was checking. Every hour, by hand. Yes. Why? Because machines can be fooled. Humans are harder to fool when they are paying attention. And I have been paying attention since the moment I took this job. She turned to me. "You know who did this. You know who has been feeding them information." I did. I had known for 2 days. I had been running my own analysis, tracking the timing of the attacks, comparing them against the communication logs from Vira's encrypted channel back to the Dominion. There was only one person who had access to both her itinerary and her security codes. Only one person who could have reassigned her Kavari guards without triggering a review. Commander Drevin, her oldest advisor, her mother's closest friend, the person she trusted more than anyone alive. But I had not told her, because I wanted to be wrong, because I understood what this information would do to her, and I had seen enough people break under the weight of betrayal to know that timing matters more than truth. "Give me until tomorrow." She studied my face. I think she saw more there than I intended to show. "You already know," she said. "You are not verifying. You are preparing." "Preparing for what?" "To tell me something that is going to hurt." I did not answer. She turned back to the viewport and pressed her fingertips against the glass. The bioluminescence in her skin flickered. She was trying very hard not to ask the question she already knew the answer to. That night, she fell asleep in the co-pilot seat again. This time, she did not murmur in her sleep. She was silent, curled beneath the thermal blanket, her silver hair falling across her face. I sat beside her and watched the stars and thought about how to say a thing that would cut deeper than any blade. I laid it out carefully. The communication logs, the timing of the attacks, the reassignment of her Kavari guards, ordered through a channel that only Drevin had access to, the navigation hack, executed using security codes that only Drevin possessed. Every piece of evidence, arranged in order, undeniable. She did not cry. I had expected her to cry. Instead, she went absolutely still. The bioluminescence in her skin dimmed until she was nearly gray, like a star going dark. She sat in the pilot seat and stared at the evidence on the display, and the silence that filled the cockpit was the heaviest silence I had ever known. "How long have you known?" she asked. "2 days." "Why did you wait?" "Because I wanted to be wrong." "For your sake." She closed her eyes. "You waited because it would hurt me." "Yes." "A guard would have reported immediately." "Yes." "You are not my guard anymore, are you?" I looked at her. She looked at me, and neither of us said anything, because the answer was already there, in the 2 days of silence I had carried to spare her pain, in the blankets I draped over her shoulders when she fell asleep, in the way I said her name instead of her title. No, I was not her guard anymore. I did not know exactly what I was, but the word guard did not cover it. We used the knowledge. Together, we fed Commander Drevin false coordinates through the encrypted channel, a decoy route that would lead the Syndicate's main forces into an empty system, 2 jumps away from our real position. Meanwhile, we plotted an uncharted course to the Conclave, threading through systems that did not appear on any standard map. It almost worked. On day 6, 12 hours from the Conclave system, the ship's collision alarm triggered. Something had entered our local space. Not from a jump point, not from normal space. It had simply appeared, as though the fabric of the universe had opened and let something through. The Docri were bioengineered organisms created by a civilization that had been gone for 10,000 years, designed as planetary siege weapons, living engines of destruction, 9 feet of armor, forged from a metal that bonded with organic tissue, fused to a nervous system that could adapt to any combat situation in real time. There were fewer than a dozen in the known galaxy. They were the last resort. The thing you sent when you wanted something, not just ended, but erased. Someone had sent one for Vira. It hit our ship without warning. One moment the hull was intact. The next, something tore through the outer plating like it was cloth. The whole vessel shuddered and screamed, alarms shrieking from every system. Atmosphere warning lights flashing red as pressure started to drop in the forward compartments. I grabbed Vira and pushed her behind me. Get to the reactor bay. All the way aft. The bulkheads are thickest there. What about you? She grabbed my arm. Her grip was stronger than I expected, and her eyes were bright with something that was not fear. It was fury. Do not die, she said. I am ordering you not to die. I will take that under advisement. I moved toward the breach. The Dockree was already inside the ship. I heard it before I saw it, a sound like grinding stone and tearing metal, and then it came around the corner of the main corridor, and I saw it clearly for the first time, and every animal instinct in my body told me to run. It was massive. 9 feet of dark, living metal that shifted and rippled like liquid mercury stretched over a skeleton of pure force. Its head was featureless, except for 2 points of deep red light where eyes should have been, and its arms ended in configurations that changed as I watched. Blades becoming claws, becoming hammers, becoming things I did not have names for. It filled the corridor wall to wall, ceiling to floor. There was nowhere to go around it. There was nowhere to hide from it. Every galactic combat manual I had ever read said the same thing about Dockree. Do not engage, flee, evacuate. There is no tactical approach that yields a positive outcome for any known species. I engaged. Not because I thought I could win. I knew I could not win a straight fight against this thing. But I did not need to win. I needed to do something else. Something the combat manuals never account for. Because the manuals are written by species that calculate odds and act accordingly. Humans do not always act accordingly. A blade arm caught my shoulder and opened a gash that ran from collarbone to shoulder blade. I felt the impact, felt the heat, felt the warm spread of blood down my back, and I kept running. The reactor bay was at the heart of the ship, a small chamber housing the compact fusion core that powered everything. It had manual override controls, emergency containment releases, and one very specific feature that I was betting everything on: a self-destruct sequence that could be triggered manually. The Dockery followed me. Of course it followed me. I was the target between it and its objective. It came through the reactor bay door like a storm made solid, and I was already at the control panel, my bloody fingers entering the override code. Seal the aft bulkhead now. If you trigger the reactor, you will be inside the blast radius. I know. You will die. Maybe. Maybe is not good enough. It is all I have. Seal the bulkhead, Vira. I heard her breath catch over the intercom. 1 second. 2. Then the aft bulkhead slammed shut with a sound like a vault door closing, and I was alone in the reactor bay, with a Dockery and a fusion core, and about 15 seconds to live. The Dockery came at me. I dodged the first strike, took the second one across my back, felt ribs crack, felt something inside me shift in a way that meant internal damage. I hit the final override. The reactor core began its emergency overload sequence. The room filled with light and heat, and a sound like the universe holding its breath before screaming. I did the only thing left to do. I threw myself toward the aft bulkhead. The blast hit me from behind like the hand of a god, a wall of force and heat and blinding white that picked me up and threw me against the sealed door, and then there was nothing. Not darkness, not light, nothing. And then, slowly, distantly, like hearing a voice from the bottom of a well, I heard someone saying my name. When I opened my eyes, Vira was there. She was kneeling over me, her silver skin smeared with my blood, her hands working inside an emergency medical pod that she had dragged from the aft compartment to where I lay crumpled against the bulkhead. The pod was Athen technology, designed for Athen physiology, and she was manually reprogramming it on the fly, her fingers dancing across holographic controls, rewriting medical protocols in real time to accommodate a species the machine was never designed to treat. "Stay awake," she said. Her voice was steady, but her hands were shaking. "Do not close your eyes." "The Dockery," I managed. You are not allowed to say good. You are burned across 60% of your back. You have 3 cracked vertebrae, shrapnel embedded in your spinal column, and a collapsed lung. You should be dead. Should be is not the same as is. Stop talking. I need to recalibrate the cellular regenerator for human tissue density. Your species has a different collagen structure than anything in this database, and I am having to extrapolate from veterinary files for Terran mammals. You are saving my life using animal medicine? I am saving your life using everything I have. Now be quiet and let me work. She worked for 6 hours. 6 hours of constant recalibration, constant adjustment, constant learning. She did not know human medicine. She had never treated a human. She had never even touched a human before this week. But she learned, because that is what needed to happen, and she did not stop. Because somewhere in the past 6 days she had picked up a habit from the human lying on her floor. She did not stop. When I woke the second time, the pain was still there but duller, wrapped in the haze of whatever the medical pod was pumping into my blood. Vira was sitting beside me on the floor. Her silver skin was streaked with dried blood, my blood, and her eyes were raw with exhaustion. The bioluminescent freckles on her face were dim, barely flickering, like candles at the end of their wick. She looked at me, and her expression held so many things at once that I could not sort them all. Relief, anger, something deeper than both. You were supposed to be disposable, she said. I coughed, tasted copper, tried to smile. Yeah, I get that a lot. She reached down and took my hand. Her fingers were cold. Mine were warm. Neither of us let go. Day 7. The conclave. I could barely walk. My back was a landscape of freshly healed burns covered in medical patches that the Athen pod had synthesized from materials it was never designed to work with. My spine ached with every step. A deep, grinding pain that told me the vertebrae were holding, but not happy about it. My left lung was functional again, but every deep breath felt like inhaling through a straw packed with broken glass. None of that mattered. We had arrived. The conclave summit was held on Aerith Prime, a neutral world maintained by the Galactic Council as a permanent diplomatic zone. The summit chamber was enormous, a vast circular hall with tiered seating for representatives of over 200 species, all of them watching as our battered, scorched, half-destroyed shuttle limped into the landing bay and set down with a sound that suggested the landing gear had strong opinions about continuing to function. Vira stood at the top of the boarding ramp and straightened her posture. She was wearing a simple Athen diplomatic robe, silver and blue, the only clean garment left on the ship. Her bioluminescent freckles had recovered their glow, and in the light of the landing bay, she looked like what she was. Royalty. Not the sheltered kind, the kind that had been forged in fire and come out sharper. I stood behind her, slightly to the left, one step back. Every species in the landing bay stared. An Athen princess arriving without an entourage, without Kavari guards, without diplomatic escort, accompanied by a single human. A human who was visibly wounded, visibly scarred, and visibly refusing to show any sign of weakness, despite the fact that his body was held together by alien medical technology and pure stubbornness. The position I had taken, one step behind her left shoulder, was not accidental. I had looked it up on day 4, during one of the quiet hours when Vira was sleeping and I was researching everything I could find about Athen court customs. In the old Athen ceremonial language, the position to the left and one step behind was called the Velshar, the sworn shield. A protector bound not by contract, not by payment, not by obligation, but by choice. A guardian who stands where they stand because they have decided, freely and completely, Vira had not told me this. She did not know if I knew. But when she glanced back and saw where I was standing, the look on her face told me everything. She knew that I knew, and it meant something to her that I could not put into words and did not try to. We walked into the summit chamber together. The doors opened, and 200 species fell silent. The chamber was a cathedral of diplomacy, circular tiers rising up around a central speaking platform, filled with beings of every shape and size and biological composition imaginable. I saw insectoid ambassadors, crystalline delegates, gaseous entities contained in magnetic fields, aquatic species in mobile tanks, and dozens of others I could not begin to classify. All of them watching, all of them evaluating. Vira walked to the central platform with the kind of calm that comes not from the absence of fear, but from the decision to move forward despite it. She placed her hands on the speaking podium, a device that would translate her words into every language represented in the chamber, and she began. She told them everything. The bioweapon research, the illegal experiments, the test subjects drawn from unprotected colony worlds, the involvement of senior members of the Aethan ruling house, including individuals who held seats on the Galactic Council itself. She named names. She presented data. She laid out evidence that she had spent years gathering, evidence that people had tried to destroy her for possessing. The chamber erupted, not with applause, with chaos. Delegates shouted. Accusations flew. The Aethan representatives in the upper tier rose to their feet, their silver skin flashing with agitated bioluminescence. One of them pointed directly at Vira and spoke a single word in Aethan that my translator rendered as traitor. Vira did not flinch. She stood at that podium and absorbed it all. Every shout, every accusation, every poisonous word. And she kept speaking. Her voice did not waver. Her hands did not shake. And I stood behind her left shoulder and watched the room and waited. I saw him before anyone else did. A diplomatic aide in the third tier, tall, slender, wearing the robes of a minor trade delegation. Not the movement of a diplomat heading for the speaking queue, the movement of someone with a purpose and a deadline. His hand was inside his robe, and the shape of what he was reaching for was unmistakable to anyone who had spent a lifetime around weapons. I covered the distance between the podium and the stairway in seconds that felt like hours. Every step sent lightning through my spine. Every breath pulled at the raw tissue in my lung. My body screamed at me to stop, and I declined the suggestion. The assassin saw me coming. He pulled his weapon, a compact energy pistol, and fired. The shot went wide because I was not where he expected me to be. I had dropped low, changed direction, come at him from an angle that cost me 2 cracked ribs worth of pain, but put me inside his firing arc. I hit him at waist level, drove him back into the tiered seating, and took the weapon out of his hand, with a disarming technique that was probably older than space travel. He fought back. He was trained, fast, and desperate. A knee to my injured ribs, an elbow to my jaw. I took both hits and kept going, because stopping was not something I knew how to do. I pinned him against the seats, locked his arm behind his back, and pressed his face into the polished stone floor until he stopped struggling. The entire chamber was silent. 200 species staring at a single human who had just intercepted an assassination attempt, with injuries that should have kept him in a medical bay for a week. I looked up from the pinned assassin, blood on my face, one eye swelling shut, and every delegate in that room saw the same thing. They did not see a fragile, insignificant, disposable creature from a young and unimpressive species. They saw something else entirely, something that made several of them lean back in their seats and reconsider assumptions they had carried for centuries. I did not need to. The silence said it for me. Security forces arrived and took the assassin. I straightened up, swayed, caught myself, and walked back to my position behind Vira's left shoulder. She was still standing at the podium. She had not moved. But when I took my place beside her, she reached out and briefly pressed her fingers against my wrist, a touch so quick and light that no one else in the chamber saw it. But I felt it, and it said more than words could have carried. But the tone had changed. The shouting had stopped. The accusations had quieted. Every species in that room had just watched a human put himself between a princess and death without a moment of hesitation, and the implications of that were rippling through the chamber like aftershocks. In the upper tiers, I noticed reactions. A delegate from a species I recognized as the Veli, ancient scholars who had been studying galactic civilizations for millennia, was quietly accessing a data terminal. I could not see the screen from where I stood, but I would later learn that he had pulled up Earth's complete historical database. He read for 40 minutes, and then closed the terminal and sat very still for a long time. When his assistant asked what he had found, he said only, "We have been measuring the wrong things." In the military observers section, a Karathan war chief, a member of one of the most respected warrior cultures in known space, had been watching the security footage of my fights. The Vreth, the Dakri, the assassin in the chamber. He watched the footage once. Then he turned it off and refused to watch it again. His second-in-command asked why. The war chief said, "It is disrespectful to study the methods of a superior hunter without their permission." In the moment, all I knew was that the room felt different. The way Vyra was being listened to had changed. Not because of her evidence, although the evidence was damning, because the galaxy had just been forced to reconsider what it meant to be human, and by extension, what it meant to be protected by one. After the session ended, Vyra issued a formal warrant for Commander Dreven's arrest. The Conclave's security forces, now fully briefed on the assassination attempts, moved quickly. Dreven was found in a private communication suite on the station, attempting to purge evidence from an encrypted channel. He was brought before Vyra under guard. I stood in the room when they brought him in. He was tall for an Aethan, with the kind of polished composure that comes from decades of navigating political waters. He looked at Vyra with an expression that mixed contempt and resignation in equal measure. Then he looked at me, and his composure cracked. "A human," he said. His voice was thick with disbelief. "You entrusted your survival to a human." "I did," Vyra said. "I accounted for every variable, every species, every weapon, every contingency. I planned for Kavari, for Veli intelligence operatives, for mercenary companies and black market soldiers. I even planned for the Dakri. There was no scenario in which you should have survived." You measured strength and speed and armor and venom, and you calculated that no single protector could overcome the obstacles you placed in my path. And I was right. No protector could have. You were right about protectors, but he is not a protector, Dreven. He is a human, and you should have accounted for that. Dreven stared at me. I stared back. He was looking for the thing he had missed. The weapon. The advantage. the hidden edge that had allowed a single member of the galaxy's most underestimated species to survive everything thrown at him. He was looking for a tactical explanation. He would never find one. Because the answer was not tactical. It was not strategic. It was not something you could account for in a threat assessment or neutralize with a countermeasure. The answer was simply that I had decided Vira was going to survive. And once a human makes that decision, the math stops mattering. Drevin was taken away. The evidence Vira had presented was undeniable. Careers would end. Policies would change. The ripple effects of this moment would spread across the Dominion and beyond for years. I was thinking about a shuttle with a destroyed forward section, parked in a landing bay, with a cleaning drone named Biscuit still bumbling around the intact aft compartment, and a thermal blanket folded on the co-pilot's seat, and a translation log that held a word that meant stay. I was in the shuttle, packing my kit. Everything I owned still fit in one bag. That had not changed. Maybe nothing had changed. The job was done. The princess was safe. The credits would hit my account within the hour, and I would have enough money to disappear for a year or two, find another dive bar on another fringe station, and wait for the next job from the next person who needed a warm body between them and trouble. I was zipping the bag closed when I heard footsteps on the boarding ramp. Vira stood in the doorway. She had changed out of her diplomatic robes into something simpler. Her bioluminescent freckles were glowing softly, steadily, in a pattern I had come to recognize as calm. Not performed calm. Real calm. The kind that comes from having survived the worst and finding yourself still standing. She looked at the bag in my hands. Then she looked at me. "Where are you going?" she asked. "Job is done. You are safe. The conclave has your testimony. Drevin is in custody. You do not need me anymore." She was quiet for a moment. Then she took a step closer. "I asked you a question when we first met. Do you remember it? You asked me if I could protect you. Can you protect me, human?" Those were my exact words. I remember. I did not realize what I was asking. I set the bag down. "What do you think you were asking?" I thought I was hiring a shield, something to stand between me and danger, and absorb the impact so I would not have to. Something temporary. something I could replace when it broke. Close enough that I could see the individual points of light beneath her skin, the tiny constellations that mapped her emotions in patterns I had spent 7 days learning to read. Now I realize I was not asking you to protect me. I was asking you to care. And humans, once you care, you do not stop. Do you? I looked at her. The princess who had walked into a dive bar and hired the least impressive species in the galaxy because she thought no one would notice. The woman who had reprogrammed an alien medical pod to save a life that her entire civilization considered expendable. The person who had stood at a podium and told the truth to a room full of people who wanted her silenced, and who had not flinched, not once, because somewhere in 7 days and 5 systems, and more close calls than either of us could count, she had learned something about not stopping from the human standing behind her left shoulder. No, I said, we do not. She held my gaze. The lights in her skin pulsed once, warm, slow, and steady. Then stop packing, she said. I stood there for a long moment. The shuttle hummed around us. Biscuit bumped into my ankle and whirred happily. The stars outside the viewport burned in their ancient, patient way, indifferent to the small and enormous things happening beneath them. She asked me if I could protect her. A throwaway question to a throwaway species. She did not realize that humans do not protect things because we are strong. We protect things because we are terrified of a universe where we did not. She did not realize that the most dangerous thing in the galaxy is not claws or venom or living metal or engineered siege weapons. It is a human who has found someone to come home to. She did not realize. But she does now. I stopped packing,